Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So this is a brewery that I've known about for quite a long time, and they're a very well respected and very well established brewery down in the Netherlands, but until very recently I had just never come across any of their beers before, and then all of a sudden I ended up with two of them from different places. So kind of strange how the world works, but yeah, really looking forward to trying this one. Both of the beers that I've got from this brewery are really quite quirky and interesting, so I hope that you guys enjoy both of these reviews. And it's always nice to review new stuff from the Netherlands, of course. But yeah, for this review we are going to go to a little place called Huis, which is in Zuid-Beveland in the southwestern part of the Netherlands, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brouwerij Emelisse. So to give this beer its full name, this one is the White Label Barley Wine Bowmore Barrel Aged 2019 edition. So it comes in at 12.6% ABV. As the name tells you, it's a Scotch whisky barrel aged barley wine, and yeah, I think this one could be really quite interesting. So Bowmore is an Islay whisky. It's quite a peaty and smoky one from what I remember. I have had it maybe 2 or 3 times, but not in quite a while actually. And you know, I'm really curious to see how the barrels actually affect a barley wine. I've had a good few smoky barley wines and I think they're really interesting. So I think this could turn out to be a really nice introduction to Brouwerij Emelisse. I've heard very good things about the White Label series. Of course, they're doing some really interesting barrel aging things down there if you look through the Brouwerij Emelisse website. So yeah, this one just kind of caught my eye. But this beer arrived here in Sweden as part of the Tillfällig temporary assortment through Systembolaget in March. I think actually, sorry, it was February of 2021 that this beer came out, and it was released along with an Imperial Stout. But it was just this one caught my eye because it was a barley wine and it was Scotch whisky barrel aged, so I decided to go for this one over the other one. But yeah, certainly looking forward to trying this one. It's nice to finally introduce Brouwerij Emelisse to you here on the channel, and the other beer that I have from these guys to review a little bit later on is a little bit of a special one, and that was one that I actually brought back with me from the Netherlands during my recent trip down there, so you'll see that at some stage over the next little while. But yeah, this should make for an interesting review, and as I say, I hope that you guys enjoy it. Since it's a Dutch beer review as well, a massive shout out to my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective. We've got Remy Den Dupe, Beer Geek Holland, the OG Dutch beer tuber, Thomas Hoendam, Thomas Open, a very, very close friend of mine. We've got Herben Caspers, who's got some really interesting reviews as well. He is a Dutch beer geek. And then we've also got Douglas Hesselmans as well, who is Beers with Douglas. He's the new one on the block, and he's just got a new symbol where he looks a little bit gangster and stuff, so I really like that. But what I'll do is I'll put the link to the Dutch Beer Collective Facebook and Instagram pages down there. There you can find the links to all 4 of their channels. Do go and show them some love, give them a follow on Instagram, and keep up to date with what's going on there. All of them do English reviews every so often, and they're reviewing some really interesting beers. As I've told you in previous reviews, the Dutch beer scene is very strong these days, and if you can try some of the beers from there, I highly recommend that you do. So go and check out those guys, and they'll keep you up to date with all of that. Share the love, as we always say. But yeah, certainly looking forward to this one, and let's get cracking with it then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brouwerij Emelisse. Like I said, there will be one quite soon, but hopefully beyond that we can do a few more as well. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I still have quite a few beers left from my trip over there, and I'm sure the Dutch guys will keep me supplied with Dutch beers going forward, so we'll make sure there is a steady stream. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Emelisse, and I do apologise in advance for any bad Dutch pronunciation. I'm still getting used to this. It's quite a difficult language to pronounce. But anyway, Brouwerij Emelisse, as I've told you already, are based in a little place called Huis in Zuid-Beveland in the southwestern part of the Netherlands. But the company was founded back in 2004, and it takes its name from the village of Emelisse, which is one of the 12 historic villages that make up present-day Zuid-Beveland. So Vrij Beuze, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is one of the original founders of the company, and he'd been a hobby brewer for a number of years, and he founded the company along with I think it was another 5 or 6 different investors who were from various sectors, including agriculture and food, restaurateurs and hoteliers and things like this. It was a collective effort from the start. But yeah, Vrij Beuze had been a hobby brewer for a number of years, and in the late 1990s he actually started brewing a beer which was called Emelisse Abdij beer at the Brouwerij down in Belgium. So in September of 1998 the Emelisse Foundation was formed with the idea of promoting Zuid-Beveland as a little bit of a tourist destination and also promoting the local produce and stuff like this. And one of the goals that they had was to produce a beer using locally sourced barley, and this was brewed initially at De Halfman in Hulst down in Belgium again, and you'll probably know their beers, the De Halfman triple and quadruple. Those are very, very nice actually. But a little bit later on though, in 2004, Brouwerij Emelisse was officially founded, and they built their own brewery in Kamperland in 2005, which opened in October of that year. But the premises was combined with a restaurant to make it profitable, and the brewery was installed with 2 copper 1,000 litre kettles and tanks that had a total fermentation capacity of 16,000 litres. But Peter van den Einden came in as the head brewer, and he also brewed his own beers under the name of Brouwerij until about 2007, when I believe he retired, and then at this point Kees Boeberman came in and joined the company as brewmaster, and he came from a background as a chef, and he was also an avid home brewer, and I've reviewed quite a few beers from his brewery, Brouwerij Kees, as well on the channel. That's how I knew about Brouwerij Emelisse. But the brewery had a lot of success once Kees came in, and they began to export their beers abroad to the US in 2010, and at this time they started to outsource a little bit of their brewing to the Proefbrouwerij in Locriste near Ghent down in Belgium. But Kees Boeberman was instrumental in the growth of this company, but he left in 2015 to found his own brewery, Brouwerij Kees, and I do recommend that you check those guys out. And then the following a little bit later on, he was replaced by John de Vries for a short period, who left in turn to go to Brouwerij de Molen, who of course are very, very famous in the Netherlands these days. But the following year, in 2016, the brewing was taken over by, or the complete brewery company, if you like, was taken over by Slot Oostende Brewery and in Hols. And so the production in the Kamperland brewery was stopped eventually in 2017, but the premises remains as a restaurant called Restaurant Emelisse. And yeah, these beers are now brewed in Hoos, very close by. So Kamperland is kind of on the northern part of the little island if you look at the map, and then you can see the Restaurant Emelisse in there, and then Hoos is kind of to the southeast of Kamperland actually. But they've still got the whole building there, and if you look at the pictures of it, it does look pretty nice actually. But the current brewmaster of Brouwerij Emelisse is Jens van Stee, and as of April 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they've produced 55 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, although I would have thought it was a little bit more than that considering how old this brewery actually is. So yeah, 17 years old, and so I would have thought that there would have been a good few more beers than 55. I've seen on internet shops and things like that quite a few different beers from these guys, so that was something that really surprised me a bit when I was researching this brewery. So I do wonder if Untappd maybe has it wrong in this case, and I think that can be a problem with Untappd when it comes to the older breweries like this, so maybe need to write to them and ask them about that. But yeah, as I say, the head brewer now is Jens van Stee, and they're known for lots of different styles, but their white label barrel aging series seems to be getting a lot of praise at the moment. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij Emelisse for the moment. I think that's a fairly concise history of what these guys are all about. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. A very good source for information on breweries in the Netherlands, of course, is beernet.nl, and that's where I got most of the information on this brewery, and that's a source I've been using for quite a few of the Dutch reviews actually. So yeah, if you guys are wanting to research Dutch breweries, beernet.nl is a very good place to go. But yeah, let's crack on and have a look at this beer itself then. I'm really curious about this one. So as you can see, this sort of style, if you like, is kind of typical of what you'll see on the Brouwerij Emelisse beers. This is on the other one that I have to review as well. But yeah, you can see the artwork on this is pretty straightforward. But yeah, the one thing that did surprise me about this is that it's got the best before date is actually the 17th of the 10th 2022. So yeah, interesting to be honest with you. I'm not sure if this was actually kind of brewed and bottled in 2018, so it could well be about 3 years old or something like that just now. But yeah, as I say, we only got it fairly recently through Systembolaget here in Sweden. But like I said, 12.6% barley wine, plain white bottle cap on this one incidentally, 330 millilitres. I think I paid about 70 Swedish kroner for this one, come to think of it. I'm sure it was maybe 70 Swedish kroners. It could have been 80, but I think 70 just rings in my mind, so we'll go with that. So that's roughly about €7. So that translates to maybe about $8 American and maybe, you know, about £6, £5.75 sterling, which for what it is, for a barley-aged barley wine, is pretty damn good actually. That's probably cheaper than you would pay for this in the Netherlands, I would think. €7. I'd be very surprised if you would pay less than that for this beer down in the Netherlands. But it just kind of goes to show you how you know, Systembolaget really does keep the prices of craft beer down. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious to see what this beer has in store for us. And I'm just wanting to be careful that I thought that was going to explode on me there when it did that, but no, it's fine. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. See how this goes about its business. It does look very nice, I have to say. On the pour, it does look very nice. So let me just sit this down, and I think my OCD is happy with the position of the bottle. So there we go. So before the head disappears, you could see that this beer poured with about a half finger of a kind of frothy but still quite bumpy, I would say medium beige kind of fawny head there. I really like how that looks actually. But yeah, it goes together. It does look pretty nice, this one. This is definitely quite a bright barley wine actually in terms of its colour. When you shine the light through this, it's actually got a really kind of bright chestnutty, mahogany sort of thing going on with it. So I really appreciate that. There is a little bit of a kind of reddish tint to it as well. So yeah, definitely one of the brighter barley wines that I've come across in recent times. But yeah, I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera. Oh, actually, you can see a fair little bit of it. I'm just looking at the little viewfinder here, which is reflecting. Ooh. But yeah, you can see this beer does have a really nice, quite bright, chestnutty kind of tinge to it, which is great. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice. It looks pretty good. But yeah, in terms of the colour, lovely chestnutty note, like I said. Remember, barley wines like this are going to undergo boils of maybe, you know, like at least 4 hours, I would think. So the colour of your beer is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But it is dependent in the first instance on exactly what type of malts that you use. But barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, will play a role in that as well. So perhaps the barrel aging is making this one a little bit lighter or whatever. But yeah, kind of interesting. I have to say it is quite interesting. Quite a few whiskey distilleries actually, they add colorants and stuff into their whiskies, which is kind of interesting. A few of the bigger ones, I think it's a few of the Diageo ones that do that right enough. So that can also play a role if you're using Scotch whiskey barrels, I would say. But yeah, not a fan of that, I have to admit. I don't see the point in colouring your whiskey, just let it go all natural. But yeah, the colour of that barley wine is very nice, I have to say. So yeah, nothing really particularly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. This is within the realms of possibility for a barley wine. So yeah, I guess it's about time to take a look at the aroma then. So let's see how we get on. Certainly looks the part of a barley wine. So yeah, aroma time. Oh, you can smell that Scotch whiskey barrel in there. Absolutely. Yeah, so where to begin with this? So for me, the main difference as a Scot, the main difference for me between the Scotch whiskies and the American bourbons, if you like, because you know bourbon barrel aging, of course, is very popular. The Scottish whiskies are definitely more sort of grainy, if you like. They're really more grainy and you know just not as sweet and sugary as American bourbon is, to be honest with you. And that's immediately obvious when you smell the backbone of this beer. So yeah, it's really interesting. You get a lot of peat out of this one, absolutely. So Scotch smokiness is quite different to, you know, the likes of the German smokiness that you're going to get with the Weimann Rauch malts and things like this, and the German beechwood malts. So straight away with this beer, you can smell a bit of that smooth oakiness in there, but yeah, it's got that earthy, grassy, peaty sort of thing there, just sitting on top of it. So the wood almost appears like a little bit spicy, to be honest with you, but it's just really, really kind of nostalgic for me. Of course, it's like smelling home. It's like smelling some of the old Scotch whiskies. But yeah, that's the one thing about using Scotch whisky barrels, I guess, and maybe that's why they're not used as frequently as bourbon barrels, because if you have a peaty whiskey, the peat is going to dominate the aroma and the flavour to an extent. But yeah, that smells really, it's really strongly peaty, that one in the background. But yeah, kind of nice oaky note to it. The oak does actually come across as being a little bit spicy, in fairness. So you definitely get some of that, but yeah, you've got a layer of a sort of peaty, smoky character to this one. It's got the grassiness in it, it's got the earthiness in it, and yeah, you've got all of that going on in this beer, and that does dominate the aroma in this one quite a little bit. So I think what I would say about this barley wine is the aroma is not the most complex aroma that you're going to come across from a barley wine, because that barrel aging element is so dominant. But you know, I'm sure we'll get a bit more depth to the beer in the flavour, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, you can smell a little touch of a kind of breadiness to the beer. There is a little bit of that in this one, and you can get a little hint of the brown sugars. Definitely, you can smell a little bit of that treacly molasses sort of thing. There's a bit of a toasty caramel coming out of it, maybe even a little hint of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity element as well. But other than that, the malty notes are quite muted, just because of how pungent that maybe pungent's not the right word, maybe how prominent the smoky, peaty element from the barrel aging is. Remember, when you barrel age beers, you're always going to get these big kind of infused notes out of them. But yeah, this is quite an interesting beer from that perspective. Actually, as I say, I don't think I've ever had a Bowmore barrel aged barley wine, or a Bowmore barrel aged beer of any description, come to think of it. But yeah, the peaty earthiness in that is really dominant in the aroma there. On the hoppy side of things, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of it. There is a little bit of floral character and a wee bit of grassiness in there. But you know, this beer I think has been sitting in the bottle for quite a while. It is also barrel aged, so most of the green component of this beer is going to have, you know, it has dropped out. It's quite obvious from the aroma, but you never know, we might still get some of that in the actual aroma of the beer, but or the flavour of the beer, I should say. Sorry, I always do that these days. I'm mixing up flavour and aroma. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, you do get a little bit of a raisiny note out of it. There's a sort of cakey element to this beer as well. You do get a wee bit of that kind of medicinally cough syrupy, fruity kind of thing out of it. So it's got a wee element of an almost Christmas puddingy type thing going on in there, which is quite interesting. But yeah, a little bit of raisin, a little bit of a kind of juicy, plummy element to it, a little bit of a cakey thing, like I said. You know, you get that datey, pruny, dried, fruity sort of thing, and maybe a wee touch of like a black currant or blackberry sort of sharpness in there as well. But the aroma of this beer is quite interesting, but quite dominated by those peaty Bowmore elements, if you like. But yeah, I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer then. The aroma is certainly really interesting. So, see if I can remember the full name. This one is the White Label Barley Wine Bowmore Barrel Aged 2019 edition from Brouwerij Emelisse in Hoes in Zuid-Beveland in the southwestern part of the Netherlands. Got it. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, Skull, Prost. Ooh, it's quite boozy. Carbonation is quite active in that as well, I would say that. Oh yeah, the aftertaste. It's all about the peat. All about the peat. All about the smoke. What I'm going to say about this one is, I think some people, like me, I love peatiness and smokiness and things like that. I love the Bamberg Rauch beers. I love a peaty Scotch whisky. Don't really drink that much whisky these days, right enough. But yeah, I love a peaty kind of Scotch whisky. And, you know, for me, this is a really interesting proposition, and I like it. But I think for a good chunk of people that like beer, this one is a little bit more of an acquired taste, I would say, because of that peaty, smoky element. So this might, if you have the choice of a few different things from the White Label series, I wouldn't, just on first impressions, I wouldn't go for this one unless you like peatiness or smokiness. I would say go for something else. You know, a different barrel, bourbon barrel aged or a cognac barrel aged or something like that. Just be aware of that. This beer, I thought it might be a little bit less pungent in the flavour. I feel like I thought the flavour might be a little bit more kind of brown sugar leaning or whatever, but no, this is very, very peaty. So just be aware of that. But yeah, personally, I'm glad that I got this one. I am happy that I picked this one up. So thumbs up to Brouwerij Emelisse for this. Carbonation is quite active in this one though, I will say that. So yeah, it's all about the aftertaste in this beer as well. That big peatiness comes out in the aftertaste, which is just lovely. But yeah, let's try and break down this flavour then. So straight away with this beer, you can feel that oaky woodiness just forming the backbone of the beer. It's definitely got the oakiness, almost comes across as having a little bit of a spicy character to it, but I think it's just because the peat, the sort of peaty, smoky, earthy kind of character there, that sits right on top of the wood. You don't, you know, with bourbon barrels, you would get that sort of almost, you know, you would just get that slightly thin layer of like sweet bourbony sugars there, whereas no, the smoky peatiness is like glued to the, well, not glued, it's just like infused into the woody flavours, if you like, straight away. So this is most definitely a sipping beer, this one, and no question about, there's no question about that for me. But yeah, I certainly can appreciate this one for sure. In terms of what kind of barley wine it is, it's actually very difficult to say whether it's more of an American barley wine or an English barley wine. So for me, the main difference between the American and English ones, the English ones tend to be a bit more toasty and grainy and stuff like this, whereas the American ones are a bit kind of more oily and just sugary, and the fruits are a bit kind of sweeter and things as well. So it's difficult to say exactly what kind of barley wine this is, but this is most definitely a sipper. This is going to take me a couple of hours to drink, I would think, but yeah, I certainly like it. This is a nice treat beer for sure. But as I was saying, base layer of your palate, it's the oakiness, it's the smooth oakiness all the way, but then you get that toasty, peaty layer just kind of sitting on top of that. You can feel that peaty, earthy, grassy sort of thing all the way on top of that, which I really, really like. One thing you will see about this beer as well is you do get an element of kind of bread crustiness kind of sitting on top of that. There is a wee kind of sort of wholemeally brown bready element kind of sits on top of that kind of peaty smokiness too, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, in the very centre of your palate too, pardon me, you will get a little bit of kind of brown sugar there, so you can feel a little bit of a kind of, I hesitate to see, I think it might be a little bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing in the very, very centre, but as you move further out from that, it does develop a little bit more of a kind of oily, caramelly sort of thing. but you can feel the sort of peaty elements to this beer are really giving it a little bit of a kind of dry thing. It's almost, you know, it's quite an interesting texture that you get out of this beer. The peaty, earthy, kind of grassy notes, they really give that brown sugar just a little bit of a kind of almost like a savoury edge, if you like. It's kind of interesting how that goes together. So yeah, this beer is really interesting, just how everything kind of evolves out of it. But you will get one or two. I think if you go to the very centre of your palate, then move forward towards the front of that middle third of your tongue, you do get a little bit more of a kind of nutty character coming out of the beer. So yeah, it's a really interesting beer, this one, just in terms of how it evolves. In a lot of ways it's quite straight shooting. It's definitely not the most complex of barley wines that I've come across, but I think that is probably because the barrel aging component is sort of just kind of subduing quite a few elements of the flavour here. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, and you do get a little bit more brown sugar and sweetness out of this one. The further you go into the aftertaste, you can really feel that just sitting on top of everything, of all those other layers that I've described for you there. So yeah, on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of an almost cakey, well, fluffy bread crusty type element there. It has got a bit of a toasty grainy element sitting on top of it, and then in the back of that, on the back third of that of your palate there, you get a you do get a bit of a kind of, you know, it's toasty and bread crusty again on there, and then on top of that you get some of the kind of yeasty and the more airy yeasty type layers sitting on top of that. So yeah, you get a nice, you can feel it's a little bit taller, the flavour's a little bit taller, if you like, on the back. So when you go from the back of the palate, you can feel the flavours like this, and then it gradually just sort of condenses down. Then on the border region it gets quite dense, and then that middle third of your palate is really, everything is quite kind of pushed in together and quite dense in a sense. So yeah, I really like how all of that pieces together in this beer. So that kind of covers the malty and barrel aging side of this beer for sure. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, in the back corners of the palate there is definitely a little bit of an earthiness there. You do get a fair little powerful earthiness out of this one. I'm curious to know what hop they would have used in this, but the hops do have a little bit of presence in this beer. But as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality. Then as you move towards the kind of front, as you move towards the front corners of the palate, you get a really nice, you get a little bit of a kind of floral element to the beer. Then round the very front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there is just a wee touch of grassy zestiness lingering in this beer. But yeah, I think that covers the green component quite well. It's still a wee bit of that kind of holding up in this beer, which is quite interesting. I'm not sure exactly how old this one is, but I think it's been in the bottle for a fair wee while. But yeah, in terms of the fruity side of the beer then, and the front third of your tongue, if you like, so as I always say, that front third of your palate's where you get the nice oily bubble, where those juicy fruity esters kind of roll their way out of the beer. But on the you know, on that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you can feel a little bit of a kind of more concentrated, doughy, bread crusty sort of thing. There's a toasty element to it as well. Then the backbone of that front third of your palate is a really nice kind of, it's got a bit of a grainy, wholemealy sort of bready kind of thing in there as well. So yeah, that's forming the backbone of the fruity part of the beer. When you take this one in, it definitely has a little bit of a raisiny sharpness to it. So yeah, there is a wee bit of a kind of raisiny sharpness to this beer, absolutely. And then I don't get so much in the way of plummy notes on under this one, if you like. There's a mix on that back third of your palate. You start to get a more kind of sultana type, on the back of that front third of your palate, I should say, you start to get a bit of a kind of sultana type note thing. And for those of you watching different places, I've had questions about this before. For me, sultanas are dried like white green grapes. That's what I would term sultanas as. Raisins are the dried kind of purple grapes. So it's a bit raisiny on the top, and then it's kind of sultana like underneath, and that flavour just pushes forward. You start to get a few peary appley esters out of this one as well, which is quite interesting. But then as you reach the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get a wee bit of a kind of black curranty element to the beer as well, and it's just a wee bit juicy, if you like. So yeah, I really like how the fruity side of this beer goes together. Actually, it is a bit more, the fruity side of the beer is a little bit more English barley wine like, and I think the more that I drink of this beer, I think the whole thing does lean more towards the kind of English end of the barley wine spectrum. But yeah, I think that covers the flavour of this beer quite well actually, but it is a big smoky peaty beast, this one. But yeah, on the mouthfeel side of things then, what I would say is this beer is probably top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. It's definitely not the thickest of barley wines that I've come across before, and partly that will be due to the barrel aging. I always find you sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel in barrel aging in favour of these kind of more infused flavours that you get. So I like that about this beer for sure. But yeah, so yeah, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied, kind of around there. Carbonation is a little bit active in this one. I'm not sure if that's just because the beer has been sitting for a little bit, and there was quite a wee bit of sediment in the bottom of this one as well, so that would kind of make sense. But yeah, it's got a bit of slickness to it, in fairness, as well, and it does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste. In terms of hoppy bitterness and things like that, this beer I don't think is going to blow the head off you in that sense. Maybe about 30 or 40 IBUs maximum. The malt base, as I say, it has a degree of sweetness to it, but you've got that slight spiciness from the wood, you get that sort of slight dryness from the smoky side of things as well, but there is a little bit of sweetness builds in this one the further that you go. The fruity side of the beer has a little bit of sharpness to it, but then it becomes a little bit more sort of cakey and things, and slightly sweeter the further that you go into it. But yeah, the way everything comes out of this beer, I think, is really quite nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me, and it gets a thumbs up from me, this one, and I'm glad that I was able to review it. It's a really interesting one, but maybe go for one of the other white labels if you're not into sort of peaty whiskies and things like that. That would be my advice. But yeah, we can leave this review there then. So this one was the white label barley wine Bowmore Barley 2019 edition, coming in at 12.6% ABV. You do feel the booze in this one, incidentally, part of the barrel aging program at Brouwerij Emelisse in Huis in Zuid-Beveland in the southwest of the Netherlands. Yeah, bit of a mouthful this beer, but I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on this one. Always nice to review new Dutch beers. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brouwerij Emelisse. Check out the guys in the Dutch Beer Collective, and I'm sure we'll return to this brewery quite soon actually. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and prost. Thanks for watching.